Oh, hi there. I obviously love lost media, the mystery, the hunt, the history, and the friends we make along the way. But ultimately, the goal is to find them, and I don't feel like I give them enough attention when they are. Because not only is it satisfying to look back at what's been accomplished, but these pieces of found, lost media can give us insight on how others might be found, and show us that no matter how lost something is, there's always a chance. These are just some of my favorites that have been found, and there are so many more, so let me know your favorites in the comments or on Twitter at LostMediaMike. So here are 10 pieces of found lost media. Ready and Steady. In the early 90s, music historian Joel Whitburn, as part of Record Research Inc., set out to collect the vinyl for every single song to ever land on Billboard's Bubbling Under the Hot 100 chart. Whitburn would track down every last record, with the exception of one, the 1979 track Ready and Steady. The song appeared on Billboard magazine's charts for 3 weeks. On June 16th, charting at 106, moving up to 103 the next week on June 23rd, and peaking at 102 on June 30th, 1979. Though the track was obviously a moderate success, there seems to be no evidence that the song was real, or evidence of a band called DA in the 70s. He did some digging and found the song was issued by the label Rascal. He found that a record label with the same name had posted an ad in a Detroit punk magazine, and he was able to track down the record label's headquarters, finding a vacated, boarded up home. Whitburn came up with some theories. Looking at the Detroit punk scene, he discovered the Chicago-based punk band called DA, but their first release wasn't until 1981, and when contacted, they said the song wasn't theirs. By 2005, Whitburn had come to the conclusion that after years of searching, the song might not exist. Noting in his book, Bubbling Under the Hot 100, the existence of this record and artist is in question. And by his 2009 book, Top Pop Singles, the song was completely excluded. When the 2010s rolled around, Whitburn started to admit that it might just be a copyright trap or a misprint. But through his research, members of Record Research Inc. continued the search, and in 2016, Paul Haney discovered the song was registered for trademark with the United States Copyright Office in 1986 with a creation date of 1979, credited to D.A. Lucchesi and Jim Franks. Paul immediately contacted Jim Franks, who was able to shed some light on the mystery. He admitted the song was never pressed onto vinyl or released in any form. The Rascal label only existed on paper, owned by a relative of one of the band members who had released singles independently. And apparently, the band was approached by a record producer with ties to a major label, and somehow he snuck the song onto the charts, not once, but for 3 weeks, making Ready and Steady the only song to ever land on a Billboard chart without a commercial release. And Jim Franks had a copy of the song. And maybe for the first time ever, the song was played on the radio on July 8th, 2016, on the Crap from the Past radio show. But it turns out the band's namesake, Dennis Armand D.A. Lucchesi, died in 2005. The mortgage broker and part-time musician never got to see his music become a phenomenon.
You can't triple stamp a double stamp! You can't triple stamp a double stamp, Lord! You can't triple stamp a double stamp!
Dumb and Dumber, 2 foot of butt crack. Let's get one thing straight. Dumb and Dumber should have swept the Academy Awards. Man, screw Forrest Gump. You're telling me this, life is like a box of chocolates, is better than this.
Want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Now, I can't argue that The Lion King deserved to win Best Original Song, but you know what should have been nominated? The brief but classic Dumb and Dumber track, 2 foot o' butt crack. The song appears for a few fleeting seconds in the middle of the scene with the diner bully. And in these few moments, we can hear the immortal line before the song fades away. In the movie's credits, the song is seen as 2 foot of butt crack by Circle the Wagon, but the band doesn't seem to exist, and the rest of the song couldn't be found anywhere. It was later discovered that the song was sung by actor Bruce Greenwood, who in a 2009 interview on The Hour told how the song came to be in the movie. Before Dumb and Dumber was even in progress, Greenwood's friend Billy Goodrum wrote the song and brought on Bruce to play guitar and sing on the track. Years later, Goodrum called up saying that the two would be paid $2,500 each if the song could be used in Dumb and Dumber, and he of course agreed. It was basically free money at this point. Watching the movie, he heard the song and was excited to see his name in the credits, but instead the track was credited to Circle the Wagon. At this time, Greenwood hadn't quite made it as an actor. At the time, he was very disappointed that the song was misattributed. It was long believed that the only copy of the song was in the possession of New Line Cinema, but seemingly out of nowhere, an edited version of the song was posted on YouTube in early 2015 that was discovered by the song's author, Billy Goodrum, who after realized it was being sought after, posted the full track on YouTube on December 2nd, 2015, closing the 20-year search on the would-be Grammy, Academy, Peabody winner, 2-Foot-O Butt Crack. The Passion of Joan of Arc. The 1928 silent movie The Passion of Joan of Arc is the stuff of Hollywood legend. From the movie's experimental for the time use of close-ups and creative cinematography, to the incredibly nuanced performance of the titular character and the reportedly abusive methods the director used to get it out of her, the work has gone on to inspire generations of actors and filmmakers. The movie, helmed by Danish-born director Carl Theodor Dreyer, tells of the historical final days of Joan of Arc, her trial and infamous execution at the hands of the British, starring stage actress Renee Jean Falconetti in one of only 2 film roles she would ever take. But because Joan of Arc had just recently become officially canonized as a saint, French nationalists were uneasy with a Danish filmmaker telling the story of such a revered national hero. And this sentiment was seemingly shared with the Archbishop of Paris, who along with the British government, censored the movie without the director's knowledge to avoid offending the Catholic Church. Possibly because of these edits, the movie was a financial failure, and because it was censored immediately after release, very few copies of the complete film were ever made. And the year the movie was released, a vault fire destroyed the original film negatives. Dreyer was obviously heartbroken and was able to cobble together a new version using alternate takes, but this version was of much lower quality, and even it eventually became a rarity. By the end of his life in 1968, Dreyer really believed that his magnum opus would be left forever incomplete. But as fate would have it, the film would be discovered in the most unusual place. In 1981, an employee at the Dykmart Mental Institution in Oslo, Norway, discovered film canisters in a janitor's closet, labeled The Passion of Joan of Arc. These canisters were sent to the Norwegian Film Institute, where they would sit for 3 years, assuming to be just another cut of the censored version. But when they were finally examined, they realized they might have in their hands the single last copy of The Passions of Joan of Arc to have survived the church and government censorship. And one of the craziest things about this discovery is there is no record of the movie ever being shipped to Oslo. The best guess historians have is that the former director of the Dykmart Institute was a friend of Dreyer's and was personally given a copy of the film. In 1985, the movie was finally restored, and one of cinema's masterpieces was once again complete. Garage: Bad Dream Adventure. Garage: Bad Dream Adventures is a point-and-click horror game developed and directed by surrealist artist Tomomi Yuki Sakuba. Sakuba used his experience as a surreal artist to create a highly unsettling, bizarre game world that proved to be a unique combination of a skilled artist and an amateur programmer. Sakuba was inspired by the 1990 game Cosmic Osmo that he found out was made using the free Mac program HyperCard. After making a handful of games in the program, he assembled a small team and in 1995 marked the development of the game with the formation of its official website, where Sakuba would regularly post about the game's progress. When it was released in 1999, only 3,000 copies were made before the publisher stopped producing CD-ROM games, and digital downloads weren't a given like they are today, so these 3,000 copies were about it. And in 2004, 90 copies were sold on Sakuba's website, and it was briefly available in 2007 when it was officially discontinued and the game fell into obscurity. It wasn't until 2013 when 4chan got wind of the rare game that the search officially began, with the goal of archiving and making the game available on the internet. They immediately found that the game was for sale online, but ridiculously expensive, upwards of 300,000 yen or $2,600, too much for the community to crowdsource at the time. Eventually, they were able to track down an owner of the rare game, but because of the strict copyright laws in Japan, they feared legal repercussions if they dumped the game online. And let's be honest, it was 4chan, so they were probably lying. But the fear of legal issues isn't unfounded. Even the game's developer, who had a copy of the title, refused to release it online because he no longer had the rights to the game. But as the search continued, one user did produce gameplay, and the search team eventually tracked down 2 trailers for the title, which is pretty remarkable, a game with 3,000 copies made, even having any kind of marketing. And after about a year of searching, in 2014, they found Garage Bad Dream Adventure for sale on Yahoo Auctions Japan. They crowdsourced the funds, shipped the game across the world to navigate any potential legal issues, and dumped it online, along with scans of the game's disc, manual, box, case inlay, and game map, making this delightfully strange game available for anyone to experience.
Yeah, we're gonna go up your lab.
Dexter's Laboratory, Rude Removal. This 1997 episode of Dexter's Laboratory was my introduction to lost media, the first time I'd ever heard the term. In the episode, Diddy and Dexter are split into two versions of themselves, a rude and polite version. The polite versions are pleasant and proper, but their rude variants are crass and would constantly swear. Cartoon Network obviously intended to censor the swearing for comedic effect, kind of like the SpongeBob episode Sailor Mouth did later. But Cartoon Network got cold feet and decided against airing the episode, though completely finished. Despite its cancellation, the episode was never destroyed or even covered up, even being screened at various conventions in the 90s, some even claiming that the swearing was uncensored in these screenings. The episode eventually became the stuff of legend, being written off as fake, and let's be honest, an episode of the kids' cartoon with uncensored F-bombs sounds like a pretty standard urban legend. It wasn't until 2010 when Fred Seibert, the former president of Hanna-Barbera, confirmed the episode did in fact exist. The episode gained mainstream attention when in a 2012 Reddit AMA with Dexter's Laboratory creator Jendy Tartakovsky, he talked about the legendary episode. The AMA was wildly successful, and the question of the lost episode attracted the attention of the adult animation division of Cartoon Network, Adult Swim. Noticing the near mythological qualities of the episode, they began airing bumpers, hinting at and building hype that they would release the episode. Their efforts worked, and tweets about the episode received overwhelming response. Adult Swim even toyed with the hype, asking viewers to remind Jeff to release the episode with the hashtag #TellJeff. A week passed and nothing came of it. People started claiming that the whole thing was a hoax, but Adult Swim responded with a screen grab of the episode's title card, giving the first official look at Rude Removal, and this glimpse set the internet on fire. Dexter mooning and Didi flipping the bird in an official episode of a long-lost kids show. The next day, on January 22nd, 2013, Adult Swim posted the episode as it would have appeared on Cartoon Network 16 years prior, with the swearing censored. Everyone cheered, but wanted more. They wanted it uncensored. It wasn't until 2017 when animator Craig McCracken confirmed on Twitter that the episode was recorded uncensored, but doesn't know if Cartoon Network or Adult Swim have the uncensored version. Fans took it into their own hands to add their own audio to uncensor the episode. Some of them are pretty convincing, and I was honestly fooled a couple times. And even though we have Rude Removal as Cartoon Network originally envisioned it, the complete, uncensored episode is still missing. Diddy Kong Racing Adventure. Diddy Kong Racing was a major part of my childhood and a staple of the Nintendo 64, so a sequel seemed like the obvious choice, and they had some ambitious plans. The most well-known attempts are Donkey Kong Racing, shown off at E3 2001, made by the game's original developers, Rare, reworking the game into the cancelled title Saberman Stampede. Since Rare was owned by Microsoft, they no longer had the rights to use Nintendo characters from Diddy Kong Racing. So in 2004, a new team, Climax Studios, approached Nintendo to pitch their own sequel, Diddy Kong Racing Adventure. The game was completely unheard of, overshadowed by the cancelled Rare games, only coming to light in November 2016 when gaming archivist Andrew Borman was able to get a hold of the game's prototype. The demo only contained a small unfinished area, and the Rhino was meant for a placeholder, but the pitch documents showed a detailed, ambitious vision. Taking place right after the original, I guess Wizpig survived the singularity on the moon because he's back to take revenge, this time teaming up with the Donkey Kong villain, the Kremlings, to bulldoze Donkey Kong Island while everyone's away at Timber Island from the first game. Diddy catches them in the act and assembles the racing gang to defeat Wizpig and the Kremlins. They would have included characters from the first game, like Diddy Kong, Timber, Tip Top, Crunch, even though I'm pretty sure he's a Kremling, Banjo, Conker, Bumper, and Pipsy. And members of the Kong family, like Donkey, Dixie, Lanky Kong, and the Banjo-Kazooie character Mumbo Jumbo. And some of the characters would have had dark, alternate versions of themselves with different abilities. Climax Studios planned for 16 distinct villages, each containing 3 tracks. Beating certain races would unlock new characters, culminating in unlocking Donkey Kong. The sequel would have expanded on the original playable vehicles, keeping the carts and planes, but replacing the hovercraft with a hover scooter and adding jet skis, quad bikes, and buggies. And on top of all these innovations, Climax also planned for characters to be able to jump to different vehicles mid-race. Despite having a solid pitch with clear goals and innovative gameplay for the time, Nintendo passed on the game. Things like rights issues concerning characters from the original game that are now owned by Rare might have contributed to Nintendo saying no, and the company seems content with letting the Diddy Kong Racing franchise fade away. Crybaby Lane. Just before Halloween on October 28, 2000, Nickelodeon aired the horror comedy made-for-TV movie Crybaby Lane, and after a single airing, the movie seemed to vanish. Crybaby Lane was originally envisioned as a $10 million theatrical release before being scaled back to an $800,000 TV movie. Like other Nick and Disney Halloween movies, Crybaby Lane was meant to be both scary and family friendly, but the fact that Nickelodeon discontinued the movie fueled speculation that they might have crossed the line, that the movie was too scary or possibly too graphic for children, leading to mass parent complaints. Others had some more out there theories, like the movie was aired by mistake, that Nickelodeon didn't own the rights, or that the movie just straight up didn't exist. In the mid to late 2000s, fan sites began popping up with the goal of collecting information on the movie and contacting anyone who might have a copy. To make matters even stranger, when reaching out to Nickelodeon, they straight up denied the existence of the movie despite all the evidence, claiming that it was a hoax. And this doesn't sound too unreasonable. As someone who personally watched Nickelodeon religiously in the late 90s and early 2000s, I don't remember ever hearing about this movie. But Nickelodeon's propaganda that it was a hoax was exposed when in 2000, Reddit user Fire Salad Peach came across a VHS bootleg recorded on the movie's premiere and posted it online. Nickelodeon took advantage of the hype and marketed the movie as Nickelodeon's dark secret and as banned from TV, airing Crybaby Lane for the first time in over 10 years on October 31st, 2011, proving that Nick were just being dicks about it the whole time. The movie's director was interviewed and said he was surprised and flattered about the movie's renaissance, but said he had never heard that Nick banned the episode. "I just assumed they didn't show it again because they didn't like it. I thought I failed and I moved on." Nickelodeon would later admit they never banned the movie, they just forgot about it. Crybaby Lane has gone on to become a cult classic, and it turns out Jim Gaffigan is in the movie. And in my opinion, the search for Crybaby Lane, with its widespread search, fan pages, and eventual airing on Nickelodeon, was a major catalyst that helped grow the modern lost media community to what we have today. The Electric Pied Piper. Similar to Crybaby Lane, The Electric Pied Piper was a made-for-TV movie produced by Nickelodeon. Airing on February 3rd, 2003, the animated movie was based on the classic folktale The Pied Piper of Hamlet, with the Pied Piper being switched out for a Jimi Hendrix-inspired guitarist, played by Wayne Brady. The songs were written in the 90s, but production on the movie started in 2000, but was constantly delayed because the soundtrack featured parodies of popular songs, and the studio had to wait until the music samples were cleared. And even then, there were still issues. Nickelodeon's legal team forced additional changes in the music to avoid sounding too much like the songs they were parodying. Likely because of these issues, Nickelodeon only aired The Electric Pied Piper a handful of times after its debut, despite having some solid star power behind it. Wayne Brady, of course, but also Rodney Dangerfield, Rob Schneider, and George Segal. By the time people started looking for the movie, only 3 short clips could be found online, some of which were later removed. A search team was eventually able to get a hold of the movie's director, Raimi Muzquiz, who had a copy of the movie but couldn't release it because Nickelodeon owned the rights. And when contacting Nickelodeon, it turns out they misplaced the documentation that proved they held the rights to the music used in the movie, making an official release impossible. And unlike Crybaby Lane, it seemed like no one had a bootlegged copy laying around. It wasn't until August 8th, 2016 that an anonymous source who worked on the movie leaked a VHS copy online. And days later, Lost Media Wiki user Stuart Is Me acquired a separate DVD master of the movie that they promptly uploaded online for all to see. But this isn't where the search ends. From 2019 to 2020, user Synth Commando spearheaded an effort to collect all the remaining songs from the movie, eventually acquiring the demos that had to be changed due to copyright issues, the movie's placeholder music that was used during production, and the movie's complete underscore. To my knowledge, the only part that Synth Commando is yet to find is the demo version of the song Rat Town USA, which might not exist. And on May 22nd, 2021, a lost, deleted scene was posted online. According to the video's description, the scene was never finished because the animator working on it ghosted the director, so the scene had to be scrapped. Unlike Crybaby Lane, Nickelodeon has never re-aired The Electric Pied Piper. Howard Ashman's Aladdin. Being one of Disney's all-time classic movies, it would be reasonable to think the whole thing was planned perfectly from the start, but Aladdin had a troubled production, with a ton of rewrites, massive changes to characters, and a plethora of lost songs, all of which started with a pitch by songwriting duo Howard Ashman and Alan Menken. While the two were writing the music for The Little Mermaid, in 1987, Ashman wrote a detailed film treatment based on the Arabic folktale Aladdin, outlining the plot, characters, and penning 13 songs, of which Menken wrote the music for. And their version was wildly different from the final movie. The story had two genies, the genie we got in the final movie, and the genie of the ring who narrated the movie. Aladdin would have been part of a group rather than a loner, with his friends Babkek, Omar, Kasman, and Abby. His main motivation would have been to make his mom proud by showing her he could be responsible. Jasmine was meant to be a comedic character, being described as a spoiled brat. Jafar was named the Wazir, with his British parrot sidekick Sinbad, who was obviously changed to a Iago. But the biggest change comes with the ending. Over the course of the story, Abby and Aladdin slowly developed feelings for each other, and in the end when he's offered Jasmine's hand in marriage, he declines and lives happily ever after with Abby. They presented their 40-page treatment to Disney, and despite it being a fantastic pitch that the executives seemed excited about, they passed on the project, though Disney did keep the rights to the idea. Ashman and Menken were instead brought on to fix Beauty and the Beast by making it a musical. Knowing how great his story was, Ashman considered buying the rights to Aladdin from Disney. But as it turns out, Disney were so impressed by the story, they gave it to screenwriter Linda Wolverton, who made her own version inspired by the 1940 movie The Thief of Baghdad, replacing Aladdin's friend group with Abu and turning the Wazir into Jafar. Disney hired John Musker and Robert Clemens to direct the project, and the two took the best parts of Linda's script, the original pitch, and combined them. Before the directors finished their version of the story, Disney set a release date for November 25th, 1992. By the time they did turn in a script in mid-91, Disney chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg wasn't happy, demanding rewrites, but refused to change the movie's release date, which was only a year and a half away, causing a massive panic through the Disney offices. Through Katzenberg's demands, the movie deviated even further from Ashman's vision, removing Aladdin's mom, making Iago a comic character, fleshing out Princess Jasmine's character, adding Raja the tiger, changing the setting from Baghdad to the fictional Agrabah, and cutting a ton of Ashman and Menken's original songs. The duo were brought on to write additional music, but around this time, the story takes a dark turn. Following the 1990 Academy Awards, Ashman announced to his friends and family that he had been diagnosed with late-stage HIV/AIDS. Today, the disease is manageable, but in the early 90s, it was a death sentence. Though he was still involved with the production of Aladdin in his illness, Howard Ashman died on March 14, 1991. Beauty and the Beast was dedicated to his memory, but he never got to see his version of Aladdin fully realized, with lyricist Tim Rice being brought on to finish the movie. Of his 13 songs in the original 1987 pitch, only 2 were used, Arabian Nights and Friend Like Me. It wouldn't be until nearly 20 years after the movie's release that we would hear more of Ashman's original music in Aladdin's 2011 stage musical adaptation. The production added back most of the original songs, but by the time the musical finally premiered on Broadway in 2014, some of his music was once again cut. This might have been where the story ended, if it weren't for the Lost Media Wiki. On August 14, 2017, Lost Media Wiki founder Dykate received an anonymous email with the entirety of Ashman's original treatment of Aladdin, which is now available through the Library of Congress. Even as late as 2020, we're still getting more insight into Ashman's movie, with the Disney Plus documentary Howard detailing Howard Ashman's career and some of his vision for Aladdin. Thank you so much for watching. There are hundreds of more pieces of found lost media. These are just some of my favorites. Let me know your favorites in the comments or find me on Twitter at LostMediaMike. This video was highly suggested by my viewers, so if you have something you want me to cover, feel free to let me know and it might just show up in a future video. This is Mike with All Things Lost. See you soon.